After all of the excitement of the proposal and getting engaged, it's time for couples to start planning their wedding day. Some people struggle to even know where to start. So in this episode of the Plan My Wedding podcast, we sat down with wedding planners Amy and Michelle, and they talked us through wedding planning priorities for newly engaged couples. If you are planning a wedding, listen up. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Plan My Wedding podcast. We're back in our office today and we're talking all things wedding planning, particularly for newly engaged couples. Sat opposite me is Michelle and Amy, who are the co-owners and founders of The Wedding Bubble, a planning service based here in Birmingham. So ladies, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So as we said before, this episode is all about wedding planning, and we're going to hopefully hear some great tips and insights of how we can make the whole process a lot more smoother and take away some of the stress. But before we get into that, it'd be amazing if you could tell us a little bit more about you guys, your background, and how you kind of started up The Wedding Bubble.
So myself and Amy met about 10 years ago. Our eldest daughters went to preschool together. I'd left my career in marketing just because I wanted to be at home with my little girl. And Amy was thinking about setting up a wedding business in styling. So as that built, I started doing little bits and bobs with her. And then a few years ago, we decided, why don't we club our skill sets together and build something together. So The Wedding Bubble was born, and there we are.
Yeah, so I started off, my career is in corporate, so I've always been Birmingham born and bred, never gone very far from the city centre for work and play. So I've always worked for lots of local companies, left my career in HR after I had my second child, decided to set up, as Michelle said, my own styling business, which really took off, and then I needed assistance to help me, so Michelle came and jumped on board. And then, we kind of developed the dream of The Wedding Bubble from there.
And I guess the wedding industry can be a shock if you've never worked in it before. It can be such a change from your previous job. I mean, how do you both find the industry as a whole working in it? Yeah,
I mean, it's absolutely amazing to be part of the wedding industry. It is a brilliant, vibrant industry to be in. There's so many amazing suppliers out there, but when you first go in it, it's a shock to the system. It's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. It's somebody's special, couple's special day, so there's a lot riding on it, but at the same time it's just so much fun.
And I think, both our careers in the past, even though we didn't start in the wedding industry, working in marketing and planning photo shoots and catalogue launches, you're still working with lots of different elements towards one day where it all comes together. Amy in HR creating training events and things like that. So it's not like we've just woken up one day and decided to have a go. We'd got those skill sets and knew how to call on them. And it was just putting it towards a couple's big day. And it's just a brilliant thing to be a part of. Everyone's so happy and excited. And we're there to take the stress off them so they get even more happy and excited.
Cool, so you're talking there about taking the stress away from couples. So before we get into the actual hints and tips that you guys are going to give, I think a good place to start is people's idea of a wedding planner in their head. So I said to you guys before, I don't know much about wedding planners, and the idea that I have in my head, if anyone's seen the Friends episode where Monica is running Phoebe's wedding, she's the whole walkie-talkie clipboard running around like a bit of a lunatic on the wedding day. How far away is that from the reality of being a wedding planner, and kind of what do you guys do? How do you approach wedding planning?
We do run around like nutcases with a clipboard, but we don't have a headset yet. But you don't see that as a couple. So if we have any of that action going on, that is way before the couple walk into the venue or on site. We are there from 9-10 o'clock in the morning. We're working really hard with suppliers. We're making sure everything is exactly how the couple want it. And we are just normal people. I think there's a lot of stigma around wedding planners, and it's really refreshing when couples meet us and they kind of go, oh, you're just normal people. So there can be a little bit of snobbery around it, and only certain people can afford wedding planners. And we've created this business to work with all couples with different budgets, with all budgets. So yeah, we do some really high-end weddings, but we also do some really intimate, smaller weddings as well. And they're both just as enjoyable and exciting to do. But I do think we've kind of break down those barriers of what a typical wedding planner is.
I think that's the thing. It's the snobbery around, well, it's a luxury. I don't need one. So, you know, the only people who have them are those who've got the money to throw around. And, you know, I'm sure there are people who do that, but we work with people who may have smaller budgets, but this one little element is really worrying them, or really, you know, they just can't get past this one barrier. So we would literally just come in and help them solve that one problem, you know, and leave them to enjoy the rest of it and make the most of their budget in the ways that are going to benefit them most. You know, if we can just help in that one little element, we're more than happy to do that. Or, like we say, take everything off you and run around with a clipboard and a headset and, you know, be around bossing people around if that's the case. But most of the time, like Amy said, all our hard work is in the run-up and before the bride and groom arrive. So when they do and the guests are there, we're almost invisible by that point. We're just in the background then, making sure everything's running smoothly.
You saying working with is quite a big one there, because, like I said, my idea was that the wedding planner would do everything, but the wedding planning process should be fun for couples, right? So I guess you work with them instead of taking control.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think different people want different things. There are going to be those certain couples that just want to hand everything over. But then there's also people who enjoy certain parts of it and just don't want the stress of the things they don't enjoy. So we're happy to do as much or as little as is going to be helpful, really. You know, our aim is to just make that planning process and the wedding day the most amazing time. And take any stress away that they're feeling. So as much or as little. And if they want us to run around with, you know, earpieces, barking orders, we can do that. But most of the time we're sort of fading into the background. You know, we're behind the scenes. We don't want people to see us. We don't want people to know we're there. We're just there quietly sorting out and fixing any issues and making sure everything's perfect.
So speaking of stress there and the stresses that couples face, I'll put you on the spot here, but what's the biggest stresses that you find that people struggle with? Why would someone, for example, choose to work with a wedding planner? Is it to get rid of some stresses?
Yeah, I think that couples get so overwhelmed. Yes. So if you type in wedding photographer, you know yourselves, thousands and thousands and thousands of options come up, and I think people just can't see the wood for the trees, and they really, really struggle to know where to start, really. So part of our job is narrowing down a couple's style, so I don't think they always realise that they have a style. So when we kind of say to people, share your Pinterests with us, you know, are there particular, you know, photos that you really like the look of? Because not only does it give us an idea of the style of posing or images that they want at the end of the day, but also there's lots of things like the lighting and the exposure that photographers use. They can be really, really different styles. So I think sometimes for a couple, they don't even know where to start. I think as well, I think you'll agree, another major stress for couples is trying to please everyone and dealing with family members and people wanting to have a say of, well, this is how we did it for our wedding, well, so-and-so did that for their wedding and you should have it at this venue. So I think a lot for us as well is kind of being there as advisories and saying it's okay to do what you want to do for your day.
Advocate for the bride and groom rather than the families, because they feel, I think, sometimes hemmed in, don't they? And to know that it's okay to have a different idea or a different way of doing something, you know, I'm allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important, actually, because when we were talking in one of our previous episodes with Sammy about the wedding dresses, we were almost saying that there's too many cooks and too many opinions in the whole wedding planning process. So I guess it's great for them to have like a neutral kind of impartial opinion, because it can get, like you said, like weddings can cause arguments. They can cause a lot of trouble. Then it shouldn't be that way. So it's great for them to have kind of like an impartial opinion, I guess, with you guys. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by the Wedding Film and Photo Company. We can take care of your wedding photos, videos, and even both at the same time. We cover the whole of the UK, so if you haven't booked your photographer or videographer, head over to weddingfilmandphoto.com to see what packages we offer. We also film every episode of this podcast, so head over to our YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook pages to watch in full and to see behind the scenes content. Our handle is @weddingfilmandphoto. Anyway, enough about that. Back to the podcast. The main reason that I started this podcast really is because I'm getting married myself. and I'm getting married next year. And although I'm in the industry and I know kind of what the crack is, like I understand what goes on, I still was struggling. Like we sat down and we're like, okay, let's plan it. And we both kind of looked at each other and like, okay, what do we do now? So I think a good place to start is, let's assume someone has just got engaged and they're buzzing about planning their wedding. Where should they start? What should we do? Let's get into it.
Okay, so first off, we would say try and get an idea of budget. So we don't want people going and borrowing or getting into debt or anything like that. In an ideal world, set your budget at what you're comfortable with, what you can save, you know, a sort of timeline. If you've got money there to spend now, brilliant. It's purely just, we can get moving. But yeah, first thing would be budget. Second thing is we would probably say, like Amy was saying about a style, so you need to find where you've got an affinity for. So do you want this big grand country house hotel, or do you want something more rustic, teepee in a field, or you know, do you want church wedding, civil ceremony, or non-religious ceremony? You know, really try and find out what's important to you.
Do you think a big thing there is people's expectations, and with regards to budget, for example, because if you're not connected to the industry like we are, you might not have a clue about how much things cost. Yeah. Like we get calls, you know, people will call us and I'll tell them the price of our packages and they're like, oh my God, that is absolutely ridiculous. But it's not for the industry, it's just they don't understand. Do you get that a lot with people? Let's say they have a tiny budget, which fair enough, a lot of people have, but they want the world with that budget. I mean, how realistic should people be with this industry, do you think?
I think for us as wedding planners, we deal with so many different budgets. I think for us, it's kind of, we have to gently teach them about the industry and the costs that are involved. So lots of people have these grand ideas, and you know, you should do for your wedding day, and we would never squash any of those, but also we have to be realistic. So when couples come to us and say, we want X, Y, and Z, we're like, absolutely fine. So your budget is this, we'll go away, here's 3 options for X. You know, you can now see these are the style that you want, this is the kind of thing that you're looking for. Maybe we need to park that idea and do something else, or keep that idea, lose something else. Yeah. So we have to give them their options and be really honest and say, you can do it, but you're going to have to lose something else, or let's decide you're not going to do it and do an alternative. So it's a little bit of, as you said, as you kind of go on in your wedding planning journey, you start to realise actually what bits are important to you and what bits aren't, and where you want to spend your budget and where you're actually happy to kind of lose it and kind of make do with, or you know, lose it altogether, or make do with something or an alternative what you originally thought of.
Someone said to me a few years ago that you should pick like 3 priorities for the day, like the 3 things that are most important to you, and base your budget around that. Because I guess if you just keep spending and your head's full of ideas, your budget can rack up pretty quickly. I'd imagine your spreadsheet's going to fill up with a lot of expenses.
Absolutely, and that's what we say to our couples. You know, we just chat to them and say, tell us what your dream wedding looks like. And as you're talking to couples, you'll realise it's the entertainment, it's the venue. They want people to walk in and have that wow factor, so you need a stylist. So for us, it's about having those consultations and really pinning down, right, we've just had a chat with you here, so from what you've said, you know, you're absolutely happy to get married in a really gorgeous kind of little country pub, but actually you want the grounds to look amazing, or you know, you want such and such on the grounds, or you want the photography. So yeah, as we chat to our couples, we can quite easily start to get a picture of what is really, really important to them.
Okay, so we talked about styles there, but what about people who have absolutely no idea about style? Like they literally do not know what they want. Where do you advise them to go? What do you advise them to do?
Well, it's interesting. Some people come to you and say, I know exactly what I want. And then you look at their Pinterest boards and it's a mix mash of all sorts of different things that clearly don't work together. All beautiful, but would just not work. So, you know, we can work with a couple to drill that down into exactly what they like. So first and foremost, Pinterest is the most useful tool for that. You know, and we can then use that and other resources to create mood boards. So what's something we've done with a previous couple who was really struggling was create sort of 3 or 4, and we sat them in front of the couple and was just like, which do you straight away are you pulled to? And we did that a few times over a few, you know, we had a range of different things. So then using that to sort of drill down, and it really kept them on track, didn't it? Really helped them to see, oh, okay, yeah, this is the way we're going. So yeah, there's different ways that we can get that answer out of them.
Do you think people get carried away with social media? For example, companies and people obviously only post their best pictures that are polished and look beautiful. Do you think people think, oh, I can have that look really easily? Do you think Instagram basically changes people's perspective?
Absolutely. I think that
it's changed weddings.
Yeah, it's changed weddings. I think the budgets that people spend in certain areas now would never have done kind of 6, 7, 10 years ago. Probably a massive one is florals. These absolutely huge, amazing floral installations are insane, but they come at a hefty price. And of course, a lot of people, apart from Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, they might go to the local florist and order some flowers, pop into an Asda and get some flowers. They don't actually know how much a professional qualified florist is to create something like that. And we have so many florists that we work with, and they are so talented. And as soon as we get these Pinterest boards with these floral installations, we say to them, okay, what's your budget for that? Because, and then we have to set their expectations, because it is everywhere. It's all over, like you said, social media, of these absolutely grand styling. And it's amazing, but it comes at a really hefty price tag. But also on the flip side, I'm starting to see a lot of candid outtakes as well, which I think is come through in the last couple of years. So we're moving away from those formal traditional poses that everybody does to these amazing moments of popping the champagne and it goes everywhere, or somebody stumbling and everybody laughing to catch them. And actually it's those moments that now when I see on our Instagram feed that I need to remember that photographer, because that is what your wedding day is. You know, it's amazing to walk in and have all these things around you, but actually it's the memories as well that are going to be there. And I think it's really important to make sure you put things in place that are going to capture those and help you to remember those as well. So I think it's kind of might be flipping a little bit now as well.
I think there's definitely a trend towards people wanting an Instagram wedding and creating the wedding purely for the photos, which is brilliant because we all want a beautiful album to look back on. But Amy's absolutely right. It's not purely for that. You've got to make sure that you're not getting, down a track that you can't kind of come back on. Yeah. And yes, have some amazing photos, but don't lose sight of the fact that this is a celebration of your love for one another and the life that you're going to spend together and have those amazing memories after. No,
I completely agree. That is an amazing point. I mean, we've seen that a lot lately as well, that we say to people, we're natural, we shoot things as it happens. Yes, we have the staged shots, because you've got to have the staged couple shots, because like you said, people want that for Instagram. But I firmly believe it should all be natural, definitely, because people can lose sight. I bet it's so easy to lose sight of the wedding. And people can argue about the smallest things, the napkins, the flowers. And although they're important to you on the day, you're not going to remember them, in my opinion, in 20 years' time.
When you're doing your house up, isn't it? You know, at the time, you're like, oh gosh, you know, this corner's not perfectly clean line plastered finish or something. But then once the room is finished and decorated and dressed, that tiny little thing that you couldn't get past is completely forgotten. No one else, you know, it is about taking a step back and thinking about the bigger picture rather than focusing too much on the teeny tiny details, which are important, you know.
Oh, they're definitely important.
That's for us to sort of take on the day, and us to make sure those little details are perfect.
Well, they all add up to the make your day, so the little things all add up. But I think the important point is to not get so hung up, I think, on the smaller details, definitely. Okay, cool. So we've got budget, and we've got style, and we've kind of got expectations and the reality. Any more tips?
Okay, so supplier sourcing is a huge one. Amy spoke a little bit earlier about overwhelm and the fact that there are so many people out there doing the same jobs. So one thing we say to couples is speak to suppliers, meet them. You know, Zoom has obviously been great over the last couple of years if you're a little bit further away. Use all those tools to actually have a chat, you know, to get to know them a little bit, because you know, there are so many out there, and they can all probably do brilliant flowers or bake an enormously beautiful cake or take amazing photos, but they're part of your big day, and you've got to be able to spend that time with them and trust in them and know that you're going to be happy with them on the day as well as with the result of whatever it is they're producing for you. There's so many people now will just contact through social media or on an email, and it's all very distanced, and it's great. But when it's something as important as having those people part of the biggest day of your life, you need to know that you can work with them and they're on your same wavelength, and you're going to get the best out of it.
You want them to arrive, you want to feel like you know them, so they're a part of your wedding. They fit in with your family and your friends. They're not going to stand out like a sore thumb, because they're awkward, because they haven't met anybody before. So yeah, it's definitely getting that personal touch, and don't be scared to ask questions. If you have a really experienced supplier, they will have a wealth of knowledge. They'll have lots of examples to give you and show you. And also as well, for me, a big one is recommendations. So if you're in that flurry of your friends and family having lots of weddings going on, and you turn up in these and you clock somebody like, I really like them, I really like how they've done that, get the details, give them a call, chat to them. Yeah, just speak to other people that you know that have got married as well. Recommendations are great for people who are, have done a good job and have worked for family and friends before as well.
Yeah, I think getting to know your suppliers is a huge one for me, because doing wedding videos and photos, there's I always think there's a moment just before the bride is revealed and goes down the aisle. Usually there's either one of our video guys or one of our photo guys with her last moment before she gets married. I think that's such an intimate moment. And if you have never met them before, it's so weird to just have them there on that kind of a really emotional moment. So definitely get to know, definitely get suppliers.
Kind of you being a photographer and chatting to couples, they'll talk about certain members of their family or friends, so on the day they're really close to their parents, their nan's really important to them. So you kind of know those moments when they go over to those certain people, those are kind of the dream moments that they want to see, that they want to capture. So it's really important for suppliers to know that.
Definitely, and I think another big point about suppliers is people need to realise how quickly they get booked up, right? Because people get booked up 2-3 years in advance, a lot of suppliers. So people think, it's okay, I'll put it off for another week. Before they know it, they're 6 months away and all the suppliers are booked up. So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, how important is kind of people realising timelines with booking things?
Get married in what we call the wedding season, then the really good suppliers are going to be booked up. So the people who've got the amazing reputations and they've got the huge Instagram accounts and things, they're probably booked up to maybe sometimes 3 years in advance. So if you have somebody that you adore, you really want to work with, get in touch with them as soon as possible. We'd say that for venue, for photographer, videographer. Those are the kind of guys that probably get booked up, maybe venue dresser as well and a florist. But then the other things can kind of come, so when you're looking for your dresses and things like that, maybe sometimes cars, they can be a little bit further down the pecking order. But yeah, the key ones get in there because they will have Friday, Saturdays, probably Sundays, they're going to be booked. So.
And going back to priorities, like we talked about earlier, if the main thing for you is this particular photographer, then get them as soon as you've got your date. There's no need to hang around. It's about priorities. If it's important to you, get it locked in.
Absolutely.
So we spoke a lot here about planning, and there's a lot of things that might kind of scare people here because we spoke about quite a few subjects. And people can feel really overwhelmed at the start of the process, but throughout as well. So I think it'd be good to talk about organisation and how people can stay organised and keep track of things. So I know you guys are the ones giving advice here, but someone told me some advice a few years ago, and it was to make a spreadsheet of all your finances and your suppliers. And the second was to kind of make a wedding website where you direct everyone to that website, and it just, instead of messaging all your different guests and all your individual guests, you can just send them to this website. I mean, how do you kind of advise people to stay organised throughout the whole journey?
Yeah, it's super important. So as you said, budget is huge. So get that spreadsheet, make sure you've got all your costings, because as with everybody's wedding, people get added on. things get changed. There's always, and you need to know, okay, if I'm adding on another family or if I'm having another table, how that impacts your costs. So keep on track of that, because you would be surprised how quickly that can spiral. Also, you may have fallen in love with a supplier. Oh, they're only £200 more than what we budgeted, and then suddenly you find another supplier. Oh, they're only £500 more than what we. And then, you know, before you know it, you're almost £1,000 over budget. So you have to be really, 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 really strict with yourself on that. If you are going to go over budget in a certain area, you're going to have to see where you can go under budget in another area. So something's got to give. Keep your paper folders. So if you go to wedding fairs and you've actually got physical leaflets and brochures, things like that, keep a little file to put them all in that you can keep referring back to. So if somebody's not available, or you've got to a point in your wedding planning when you're ready to book that supplier, you can dip in and find those details. Also, what I'd say is I love planning. I'm super organised. That's how my brain works, and it makes me feel happy when I know where everything is and when I'm doing things. But I know not everybody's like that. So if you and your partner aren't like that, I would advise to find somebody close to you who is. So if you get really overwhelmed with all that pending organisation and being told, you know, stick to this, find somebody close to you that can do that for you, so you have got that driving force behind you that will, you know, once a week when you're getting close to the wedding is going to drag you back in and go, hang on a minute, you haven't done this, you've gone over on that. It's really important. Do you want to talk about the wedding websites?
Yeah, so wedding websites are a fantastic tool, and what people do before them. Like you say, it can be really overwhelming when you're getting phone calls or text messages with questions and, oh, I can't get into this hotel, what else can I try? You know, to have one place that you can just direct everyone to is invaluable, and they can be as small or as large as you want as well. You know, we've seen just one-page websites with just minimal information, or much more in detail, like with RSVPs and dietary requirements and all of these other things that people need. So it's brilliant, but also for those who are a little bit more eco-minded and maybe don't want to waste paper or, you know, or extra money on postage and things like that, it's a great tool. You can know it can all be digital, and everybody's got access now. Even our old grannies and stuff are on Facebook, so you know there's no excuse to not be able to access that.
Perfect. So before we wrap up, I think a final point I'd like to touch on is how much, or the importance of involving your partner in the planning process, because I guess if there's a bride or groom who have a solid image of what they want in the day, it's easy for them to just run away with it and take full reign. But for me, it's something that you should both do together, and it should be an enjoyable process. So I mean, any advice on kind of how much you should involve your partner and kind of what things you can do together maybe?
Yeah, I think gone are the days where it used to be, you know, the bride saying my wedding, oh sorry, our wedding, you know, that whole thing, and the kind of husband-to-be just is in the background writing the checks out. There's so many different elements to a wedding now. You know, when I got married nearly 15 years ago, it was very formal, very structured weddings, and you know, it was like, if you want a centrepiece, it's that one, or that one. You know, your meal choice, it's that. You know, that's gone. You can make your wedding what you want. So I think sometimes it was quite stereotypical that the guy just turned up in a suit and was like, oh, it's all for my, you know, my wife to be. You can make it really fun for both of you. You can make sure there are elements in your wedding that are key to both of you. So, you know, if one of you enjoys vintage cars, you know, and the other one, it's really important, they love cinema, you can kind of look at a way to incorporate all these different little elements into your wedding day. So it's really important to be on the same page and make sure you're both going to turn up and enjoy the day, because it's both of your days and it's a really costly day as well. You don't want to look back and have regrets and think, oh, I never got involved in that and I didn't really have a say over that. There's so much choice out there now. You can just go to town and really enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's about picking the things that you enjoy. You don't both always have to be involved in every single detail, you know. Like Amy said, if the man's into the you know, the cars, probably shouldn't say man, should I?
No,
if one partner's more into cars or something, they can go off and sort that, and if the other one's more into food, then they can go and source that. You know, you don't have to both be into everything. Pick the things that are most fun for you, or that you've got, you know, the most excitement about.
Cool. I think that's a great place to leave this episode on. Thank you so much for joining us here in the office today. There's been some amazing insights there and some advice. So thanks so much, guys.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
We'll catch you all soon.